Is the Samsung Galaxy A71 worth buying in 2021? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, and this is the Galaxy A71. Now this phone is about 1 year old at this point, but despite that, it's still a very competitive device compared to the other options out there. Now there also is another variant of this phone called the A71 5G, which actually does have other improvements in addition to giving you 5G support, but this is the international LTE A71 model. Now with this device, we're getting a very large 6.7-inch display featuring Corning Gorilla Glass 3. The display itself is Super AMOLED at 1080p with a PPI of 393 and a 20:9 aspect ratio. So definitely kind of a more narrow but taller form factor here with the phone, but also very consistent with the majority of devices that Samsung released in 2020. For example, the Galaxy S20 features a 20:9 aspect ratio as well. And in my opinion, I think that makes the phone very well optimized for consuming content, whether that's going on social media because you'll be able to fit a lot of your feed in one frame here, or even watching video content because you're able to get a very immersive experience. But without a doubt, the Super AMOLED display does look very fantastic. I do have the brightness up at 100% right now, but we get very good viewing angles here, and things just look so bright and so clear and vibrant that it almost looks fake, but it is real. This is the legit display, so keep that in mind. Now up top here, we do have a hole punch for the front-facing camera, and the front-facing camera on this phone is 32 megapixels. Which is certainly very impressive. Now internally, with the phone, we're getting 128 gigabytes of storage, and we're getting microSD card expansion. So definitely a generous amount of internal storage as well. Now there is no wireless charging with this phone, but we do have an in-display fingerprint sensor. And it is nice and quick and accurate. Let's try that out one more time. So definitely very impressive there. Now taking a look at the camera module on the back side of the phone, we actually have a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. So we are getting a lot of different features here when it comes to the cameras. And we're also getting portrait mode on both the rear and front as well. Now here is the camera app, and I'll show you how things look on here. Of course, this is the front-facing camera right now. We can easily switch over to live focus portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds that I know everybody likes. We also have the ability to crop out a little bit to take group selfies. Then from there, we can flip around to the rear cameras. This is the main camera right now. We can then switch over to the ultra wide angle camera, and we can fit a lot more content into the frame here. So I'm definitely a big fan of the ultra wide camera. It's really great for taking photos outdoors, for example, because you're really able to fit a lot of your surroundings into one photo. But then from here, we can switch over to the More tab, where we can then access live focus portrait mode, which I already showed you, but also the macro camera. So with the macro camera, we can get very close up and have things be in really good detail. So also very impressive there. So in general, if you're looking for a decent mid-range phone that also gives you good camera quality, whether that's for photos or for video, then the A71 is definitely still a very good option and still very competitive. Now with this device, we're getting 6 gigabytes of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 730 processor. So 6 gigs of RAM is a decent amount of RAM, but the 730 processor is also a pretty solid mid-range processor from Qualcomm. Now I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 5 on this device, and what I recommend doing is downloading this app, running the test on your current phone, and then comparing your scores to these scores to see how they compare. But you can see here, I got a single core score of 547 and a multi-core score of 1737. So I think both are definitely very impressive for a mid-range device, but again, compare it to the scores in your current phone to see how it really compares. But in general, I think Samsung picked a good processor and the right amount of RAM to really well optimize this phone. Now, if you are someone that does really high-end gaming, or maybe you like to do video editing on your phone, for example, then you might want to consider maybe getting a flagship instead. But for the majority of people out there, you're going to be getting good enough performance with this phone. Now, video recording with this device maxes out at 4K for both the front and rear cameras, so that's certainly very good to see there. And we're getting a very large battery at 4,500 milliamp hours. And in addition to that, this phone supports 25 watt fast charging. So you're going to be able to recharge that battery pretty quickly. Now, the software on here is Android 10 with Samsung's One UI 2.0, and the phone is definitely going to be getting Android 11 at some point, probably in the spring of 2021. I know that Samsung has recently pledged to give their A series smartphones at least 2 years of major software updates. So considering that this phone did originally come with Android 10, then I would say we're definitely getting Android 11 and most likely getting Android 12 as well if Samsung really does follow through on their promise. But taking a closer look at the hardware here, taking a look at the left side of the phone with the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of the phone, we have the power button, volume down and volume up. Then on the top, with the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, microphone, and we have the speaker. And then on the back side of the device, we have the camera module and Samsung logo. Now, this material on the back is called Glastic, or at least that's what Samsung calls it. And essentially, it's like a glassy plastic material, but it's really just plastic. But the point is that it does look decently premium. The phone definitely does not look cheap or of low quality, and it feels very solid as well. So if you're used to using a phone that had metal or glass in the back, this will technically be a downgrade, but from a usability perspective, you're probably not going to really even notice the difference. Now, I know I already talked quite a bit about the display here, but again, just a really good display on this phone, and also very small bezels all around. So in general, I just really like this design and form factor, and I feel like even in 2021, this phone still looks very modern and up to date. But let's take a closer look at everything that comes included in the box. So you can see on the box, we have A71 right there, and we have a picture of the actual phone itself. Let's open this up and see what all we get. So the first thing we have actually is a packet here. Oh, whoops, take this out of here without tearing it apart. And in the packet, we do have a SIM card removal tool. We also get some literature, and we have a clear plastic case. So very nice that we do get this clear plastic case. I would probably recommend getting a more durable case than this one, but it's a good temporary case at a bare minimum, or a good backup case. We also have a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. We have 3.5mm headphones with a built-in microphone, and we have a super fast charging wall adapter with USB-C. Processor 2, making this kind of a lower end mid-range phone. Now, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test. Now, the video viewing experience with the A71 is definitely a very good one. The first thing is that you can crop in if you want to get a more immersive video viewing experience. But in addition to that, colors look really good. Everything just looks super crisp and super clear. So I'm a big fan of that. Really, the only downside is that audio only comes out of the main speaker on the bottom. Whereas with other devices like the Moto G Power, for example, we get audio that comes out of the main speaker, but also the earpiece, giving us a more immersive audio listening experience. But thankfully, the main speaker is still good, so it's not really a deal breaker or anything like that. But this is an improvement that I would like to see implemented with the A72. But I'll go over to there. You can see I can easily cover up that speaker, and we really can't hear anything at all. And you can see there's no... But in general, again, no complaints about that. I mean, it's just the way it is. And, you know, in general, this phone still is really good for watching video. But in conclusion, is the Samsung Galaxy A71 worth buying in 2021? First thing I want to mention is that this phone still is a very solid device. I mean, I think anybody could get this phone at this point and have a good experience with it. However, with the A72 coming out very shortly, that phone might offer some different improvements that might interest you and make you go that direction instead of getting an A71. However, I'd imagine that you'll be able to get an A71 for a bit cheaper than an A72. And if that's the case, then that might be enough of a reason to get this phone. But the phone has aged very well ever since being launched in early 2020, and it really has a ton of things going for it. It has a great looking display. It has a really good button layout in the sense that everything is exactly where you need it. The in-display fingerprint sensor is nice and quick as well, so no issues there. So I really just can't think of anything about this phone that I'm not a fan of. Of course, there are other things that you'd get with a flagship, for example, or even with the A71 5G, like 5G support, which we don't have here with this phone. But with the flagship, you would be gaining water resistance and also wireless charging and better build materials. But for the most part, for the things that actually matter to the typical smartphone user out there, the A71 definitely gets the job done. But I'm really curious to know what you think about the Samsung Galaxy A71. Are you still a fan of it? And if you own one right now, let me know what you think of the device and how your experience has been when using it. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.